It was supposed to be another forgettable Thursday. Judge Eliza Rowe had her heels up on the edge of her desk, skimming a thin case file that practically yawned at her. Contempt of court. Minor traffic violation. Some young dude didn't follow orders during a stop. Basic boilerplate. In and out before lunch, maybe time for that overpriced sushi down the block. Then her clerk leaned in and whispered something that cracked the whole damn day wide open. He's not just a clerk, Judge. He works for Justice Langston. Boom! Just like that, the air got heavy. Eliza's fingers froze mid-page. She looked up, brows knitting into the kind of frown that usually made attorneys pee themselves. "Say that again," she asked, but her clerk just nodded toward the defendant. Caleb Morgan. The name sounded like it should have belonged to someone in a finance ad. The guy sitting in front of her sure looked the part. Crisp charcoal blazer, navy tie, shoes that cost more than her mortgage, and eyes that said, "I know exactly what room I'm in." Not that most people noticed. See, all they saw was black, young, quiet. And in Charleston, that trifecta was all it took to get cuffed. Until now, Eliza's brain hit rewind. This wasn't just some random stop, not with that last name, not with those connections. Justice Langston didn't take in turns. He mentored assassins in training, legal prodigies with fire in their eyes and steel in their chests. Suddenly, the story in that thin file started reeking. Caleb hadn't just refused to comply. According to the officer's notes, written like bad fiction, he displayed a hostile attitude, didn't produce ID fast enough, and failed to show respect. Aka, he didn't crawl. "Bring in the officer," Eliza said, voice low. The door creaked open, and in strutted Officer Penley, mid-30s, confident like a dude who'd never been told no. He tossed a nod to the clerk, ignored Caleb completely, and sauntered up like this was just another notch in his belt. His smugness filled the room like smoke. Eliza didn't stand, didn't blink, she just stared. "You arrested Mr. Morgan during a traffic stop," she said flatly. "Yes, ma'am." He was uncooperative and agitated. "Agitated?" "Yes, ma'am." Raised his voice, refused to roll down the window fully, created a threat scenario. A threat from a kid in a suit. Eliza's fingers tapped the edge of her bench. "You know he works for Justice Langston." The pause was microscopic, but it was there. That half second where Penley's pupils betrayed him. "No, ma'am, that wasn't clear at the time." "You didn't ask?" "He didn't offer. He didn't have to." Now the air was sharp enough to cut glass. Caleb stayed stone still, watching. His expression said nothing, but Eliza saw it, the fury just beneath the cool. "This stop happened in Mount Pleasant?" Eliza asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, ma'am." The same town that loved its pastel porches and hated its dark skin after sunset. "Tell me," she said slowly, "what was Caleb Morgan's vehicle infraction?" Penley shifted. He rolled a stop sign. Slightly. "Slightly," Eliza echoed. Her voice dropped into something frigid. "So for a slightly rolled stop sign, you ordered him out of the car, called backup, and cuffed him on the sidewalk in front of his neighbors." "I followed protocol." "No," Eliza said. "You followed your instincts. And those instincts seem to involve body-slamming black kids in suites who don't cower fast enough." The room was dead quiet. Penley's face flushed, but Eliza wasn't done. "This case is dismissed," she said, effective immediately. Penley opened his mouth, closed it. "Furthermore," she added, leaning in, "you'll be hearing from Justice Langston's office, the Judicial Conduct Committee, and possibly a civil rights attorney. If you're lucky, you'll just lose your badge. If not, you'll be explaining this under oath, under federal scrutiny." She banged the gavel once. It echoed like a warning shot. Caleb rose, calm and silent. Gathering his papers like this was just another Tuesday. But when he turned to leave, he glanced back once, right at Penley. Not a glare, not fear, just a look that said, "You messed up. You slapped the wrong system." And from that moment on, Eliza knew the wheels were already turning. Because when power gets embarrassed, it doesn't apologize. It retaliates. And when it does, that's when the real story starts. The name hit harder than a gavel in a silent room. "Justice Langston," the clerk had whispered. And suddenly, The dull, grey machinery of Eliza Rowe's routine courtroom cracked straight down the middle. It wasn't just some forgettable traffic case anymore. Nah, this was a lightning strike. Caleb Morgan wasn't just some well-dressed kid with good posture. He was a law clerk for Langston, the only black justice on the damn Supreme Court. You could feel it in the room. That shift, that uneasy shuffle in the gallery. Even Penley, officer badge numbers are optional, blinked like a man who'd just realized the train tracks he'd been dancing on weren't empty after all. Eliza leaned back, fingers steepled in front of her face like a woman about to deliver a sermon that wouldn't save a soul. "Mr. Morgan," she said, voice cool and razor sharp, "I'm going to need you to walk me through what happened from the beginning." Caleb didn't flinch, didn't stutter. He stood up like he'd rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times. Not out of ego, but out of necessity. "I was driving back from a late shift at the State Law Library. I was less than a mile from my apartment when I noticed flashing lights behind me. I pulled over immediately." Eliza nodded, silent. Penley smirked from his side table, but the twitch in his jaw gave him away. He hadn't expected this to be more than a checkbox. Caleb continued. "Officer Penley approached my vehicle. He didn't state a reason for the stop. Just asked if the car was mine, then told me to turn off the engine and step out." "You complied?" Eliza asked, voice low. "I asked him why I was being stopped." He repeated the command and reached for his belt. The courtroom tightened. No one breathed. "I stepped out. He told me to put my hands on the hood. I asked for his badge number. That's when things escalated. Backup arrived. 2 more units. I was frisked, cuffed, and placed on the sidewalk. Still no reason given. Still no charges filed." Eliza's lips pressed into a line sharp enough to draw blood. "When did the paperwork get filed?" Caleb glanced at the file in front of him. 36 hours later, after I contacted my supervisor at the court." Eliza turned. "Officer Penley, is that true?" He didn't answer immediately. "Big mistake." "Officer," she said again, louder this time, the steel bag in her voice. "Yes, Your Honor," he muttered. "So let me get this straight," she said, rising now, voice carrying through the chamber like thunder over Charleston rooftops. "You pulled over a law clerk for what? Suspicion of breathing while black in a gentrified zip code?" Penley's mouth opened, then closed, the gallery tensed like the moment before a punch. "No dashcam footage submitted," Eliza continued, flipping the file with disdain. "Bodycam mysteriously unavailable due to tech issue. And no paperwork until the suspect requested badge numbers. Sounds less like procedure and more like panic." A low murmur rippled through the back rows. Eliza wasn't done. "This courtroom is not your shield, officer. It is not your cleanup crew. If you thought you could file late, forge a story, and rely on the defendant's skin tone to make it stick, you're in the wrong century and way too close to the wrong judge." Caleb sat down slowly, his face unreadable. But his eyes said everything. They said, finally. Eliza took a breath. "Mr. Morgan, thank you for your testimony. You may be seated." She turned back to Penley. "I'm ordering an immediate review of your conduct. I want dashcam access pulled directly from storage servers. If it's missing, then we escalate. I'm also issuing a judicial request to have your personnel file unsealed for review." Penley started to speak. "Don't," she snapped. "You're not here to debate. You're here to answer." This courtroom, the one she had once ruled like a traffic cop managing chaos, had transformed into something else. Something hotter, realer, raw. The clerk didn't just take notes anymore. She carved them like stone. Journalists scribbled like mad. And behind Eliza's voice was the whisper of every defendant who never got a second look, who got rushed, shoved, and filed away. Because that's what this courtroom had been, a conveyor belt, an assembly line for justice. Only now, someone had jammed a wrench in the gears. His name was Caleb Morgan, and with a calm voice, a sharp suit, and a name that made people squirm, he cracked the floor wide open. Eliza sat back down, slowly, deliberately, and whispered just loud enough for the court reporter to catch. "This isn't over." Because when the ground shifts, the empire built on top of it starts to shake too. At first, nobody even looked twice at him. Mid-50s, slouched posture, tie a little crooked like he slept in it. The kind of guy judges called counsel with a sigh. Public defender energy. You know the type, paper-stacked briefcase, coffee breath, reputation for losing before lunch. But when he stood up, the whole damn game changed. I'd like to request immediate review of supplemental evidence, he said, his voice flat but carrying the weight of someone who'd just found a lit match in a fireworks factory. Eliza looked up. You have new material, Mr. Wexler, Ian Wexler. And yes, Your Honor, I do. Unedited dashcam footage, retrieved from backup cloud servers via a subpoena issued at 2 a.m. this morning. That's when the room started leaning in. Penley's face twitched, like maybe his stomach just remembered he skipped breakfast. Wexler opened the black case and pulled out a USB stick like it was made of C4. Your Honor, he said carefully, what you're about to see was never submitted to court. The footage we were given originally was edited. Cropped to remove the part where my client was calm, respectful, cooperative. Cropped to remove the moment where Officer Penley says, and I quote, "This one's got an attitude. I can smell it." Gasps, actual gasps. Eliza sat straighter. Her jaw tightened like someone grinding glass between their teeth. Play it, she ordered. The courtroom monitor blinked to life. The video rolled. And for a full 60 seconds you could hear Caleb asking calmly, "What's the reason for the stop, sir?" You could hear the nervous flick of a turn signal still ticking. You could see his hands flat on the steering wheel. Then came the line. "This one's got an attitude, I can smell it." Then the backup call, then the cuffs, then silence. Eliza blinked. "Pause it." The screen froze on Penley's smirk. She turned to Wexler. "Why didn't we get this before?" Wexler gave the saddest little shrug. "I asked. They said the footage had technical issues, so I got creative." Creative, in this case, meant Wexler had stayed up all night working a case he'd been handed as filler. A nothing case. A gimme. Except it wasn't. Not by a long shot. "Do you have more?" Eliza asked. Wexler nodded. Quiet and dangerous now. 5 other stops. Same officer. Similar MO. Same neighborhood. Same demographic. All dismissed internally. All filed under uncooperative suspect. 2 of them lawyers. 1 a dentist. 1 was an Uber driver who had just dropped someone off at the mayor's fundraiser. The courtroom buzzed. Eliza's gavel hit once, sharp as a slap. Silence. Then Wexler dropped the hammer. "Your Honor, one of the officers involved is already under internal investigation for suppressing body cam evidence in an unrelated case. It was buried last year. But guess who signed the dismissal?" He turned, clicked the next file. Penley. Silence. Not the sleepy kind, no. This was the sharp, spine-stiff silence of a room realizing it's standing on a minefield. Eliza's throat tightened. "Are you saying this isn't just about your client?" "I'm saying," Wexler replied, "Caleb Morgan was just the latest target. The real crime here is the system that let it keep happening." Eliza stood. "We're taking a recess," she said, her voice low, trembling. Not with fear, but with the sheer velocity of rage she was trying to bottle up. "Before we do," she added louder now, "I'm issuing an emergency stay on this case pending full evidentiary review. Mr. Wexler, you'll submit everything to my clerk, uncut, unfiltered, unedited, and we will not proceed until I've seen it all." Penley started to protest, but Eliza hit the gavel again. "Officer Penley, one more word and you'll be held in contempt. Sit down and stay there." He sat. Wexler packed up the drive like a man who knew exactly what kind of fire he'd just thrown. Caleb didn't move, didn't blink. But in his eyes was something new. Not relief, recognition. The cracks were widening now. The courtroom wasn't just holding a trial anymore. It was holding a reckoning. And Eliza? She wasn't just presiding, she was awakening. The call came just after 11 p.m. Eliza was halfway through a glass of Pinot and a bit of rewatching the dashcam footage like it might rearrange itself if she stared long enough. The number was blocked. The voice wasn't. "Eliza, it's Senator Halston." Her gut twisted. "Bit late for a courtesy call, Senator." "I won't waste time," he said, voice tight like a man reading from a script he didn't write. You need to get ahead of this. There's talk of political fallout. A lot of people aren't happy with how visible you've made things. Oh, you mean the truth? She snapped. I mean the optics, he corrected. You're making this a spectacle. That clerk of yours, the media's painting him as some kind of martyr. People are asking questions they're not supposed to ask. There was a pause, a bit too long, and then, you need to cut ties, Elisa, let the kid go. She blinked, stunned. You're telling me to fire Caleb Morgan? I'm telling you to protect your career, he said. There's a whisper campaign starting already. They're going to call you compromised, emotional, radical. You either control the fire or it burns you down. And then the line went dead. 2 hours later, the email landed in her inbox. No sender, no subject, just 5 words. Dismiss the clerk or they dismiss you. Eliza stared at the screen so long the words started pulsing. She didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. She just sat at her desk, surrounded by paper and silence and the weight of everything trying to crush her into retreat. But by morning, that courtroom was standing room only. Protesters were already gathered outside. Signs reading, hands off Caleb, truth needs no rope. And Eliza Rowe, we see you. Media vans circled like vultures, and boom mics hovered like low-hanging clouds. You could feel it in the air. The people didn't come for law. They came for justice, and to see if the woman in black would blink. Caleb's name had leaked overnight. So had the video, and so had the fact that Eliza was no longer dismissing his case. The streets were whispering. The old guard was seething. Inside, her clerk handed her a thick manila folder. Memos, she said. From the Office of Court Administration, they're trying to reassign the case. Eliza didn't even flinch. On what grounds? Judicial conflict of interest, claiming you've gone public, that you've prejudiced the bench. Eliza flipped through the pages. Each line read like a veiled threat. The message was loud and clear. Step aside or we'll shove you. She closed the folder with a snap that echoed like a slap. Then she stood, smoothed her robe, and stepped into the courtroom like a woman who decided not to survive this, but to win it. All rise. The room buzzed, then silenced, then buzzed again like a live wire barely restrained. Eliza took the bench but didn't sit. This court recognizes that recent events have cast doubt on the impartiality of this proceeding, she began, voice steady but volcanic under the surface. Accordingly, I am rejecting all efforts to reassign this case without formal due process. There were more murmurs. One attorney at the back raised an eyebrow. A camera flash went off. I am, however, she continued, calling for a full judicial inquiry into the conduct of the officers involved, the pattern of edited evidence, and any administrative effort to suppress review. Boom! You could feel the pressure shift, like the tectonic plates under the court had started grinding. No one had expected her to fight this hard. They thought she'd bend, compromise, hide behind the rope. But Eliza Rowe had shed that rope in spirit the night she read the email. She was done being polite to power. This inquiry will be public, transparent, and expansive. If you don't like that, she added, eyes scanning the gallery, I suggest you lawyer up. And with that, she slammed the gavel once, not to end the hearing, but to announce a storm. Outside, the chants grew louder. Inside, the chessboard had been flipped. The pieces were in motion. The system had decided to fight back, but what it didn't realize was, Eliza Rowe wasn't fighting for the system anymore. She was fighting to bury the parts that deserved to rot. By the third day of the inquiry, the courthouse didn't smell like paper and polish anymore. It smelled like fear, not the screaming kind. The sweating, shuffling, looking over your shoulder kind. The kind you only feel when lies start sliding off their hinges. The evidence came in like a float, with nowhere left to hide. First, the police reports, edited, manipulated, sometimes straight up fabricated. Not just Caleb's, but dozens of them, all tied to the same handful of officers. Mostly black or brown professionals. Most of them never made it past pre-trial. Internal complaints marked resolved. Body cam logs with errors, all filed under business as usual. Then the judicial audit landed, and that's when the walls really started groaning. Judicial bias reports, buried, shelved, disappeared. Cases that should have gone to trial, tossed for insufficient merit, even when the evidence was right there screaming in legal black and white. Defense motions ignored, prosecutors coached, judges nudging verdicts with a wink and a nod. And through it all, one name popped up like gum on a courthouse shoe: Caleb Morgan. He'd been invisible at first, just a well-dressed clerk in the back row. But now he was the pivot, the flashpoint, the whisper that became a siren. It was his arrest that blew the first hole in the dam, his questions that exposed the gaps, and his silence, calm and steady, that made everyone else's noise sound like chaos. By Friday, the inquiry had triggered 3 internal investigations, a dozen media exposés, and the quiet resignation of a judge who claimed early retirement. No one believed that for a second. Eliza stood in her chambers at dusk, staring at the city through frosted glass, the weight of 1,000 truths coiled around her spine. She hadn't spoken to Langston since the whole thing detonated. Until now, a knock. No intro, no assistant, just him. Justice Langston walked in like a man born to slip through storms without getting wet, gray at the temples, calm in the eyes, the kind of presence that didn't need an introduction because silence bowed to him on instinct. "Eliza," he said, closing the door gently. "Justice," she replied, and for once didn't bother to stand. He sat across from her, pulled out a small folder. Didn't hand it over, just placed it on the table between them like a gift wrapped in consequence. "You're doing what most judges won't," he said. "I'm doing what the law demands." "No," he said, "you're doing what power fears." That landed. She blinked. "They're coming after me, Langston, not even quietly." He nodded once. "Of course they are, because you've reminded them that the law doesn't protect them. Their power does, and now you've turned on the lights." She looked down at the folder. "What is this?" "Every complaint filed in your district over the last 8 years. Unsealed. Internal memos. Denied appeals, brushed aside reviews, names you know and names you trusted." Her breath caught. "Why me?" Langston leaned back, hands folded. "Because you were part of the machine, and now you're choosing not to be." She stared at the folder like it was a loaded gun. "Eliza," he said gently, "the law doesn't fear scrutiny. It was built for it. But power shakes when you look it in the eye." Her fingers trembled as she finally opened it. And that's when the cards started falling. Names, cases, deals. A judge who quietly expunged records for white defendants in exchange for political endorsements. An ADA who dismissed forced complaints because officers have enough stress already. And a police captain who'd signed a memo declaring body cam reviews were optional in non-violent stops. Caleb's arrest marked non-violent. Because cuffing a black law clerk at midnight in a suit on a silent street with no charges? Apparently that wasn't violent enough to matter. Eliza closed the folder, hands shaking, but not with fear anymore. With resolve. "This whole damn system," she whispered, "isn't just cracked, it's designed this way." Langston stood, then let it collapse, and built something better. She looked up at him, the fire back in her chest. "Will you back me if I take this public?" "I'll do more than back you," he said. "I'll stand beside you." That night, Eliza didn't sleep. She strategized. Because the house of cards wasn't just wobbling, it was swaying. And when it fell, she'd make damn sure no one ever built a tower like that again. The courtroom buzzed like a live wire. Not from noise. Nah, not today. It was the energy. That sharp edge of a moment where something irreversible's about to happen, and everyone can feel it. Reporters elbowed for better angles. Protesters packed the outer hall like the building itself had become sacred ground. The bench was polished, the flags perfectly still. And Judge Eliza Rowe stepped in not like a woman doing her job, but like a woman dragging a whole goddamn system into the light. She didn't gavel in. She didn't even sit. Instead, she unfolded a sheet of paper. 1 page, typed, clean. Her voice, when she read it, didn't shake, it echoed. "I'm not recusing myself from this proceeding," she began, her words calm but heavy enough to split stone. "I'm not stepping down, I'm stepping up." She paused, let the silence soak in. What began as a contempt charge against a law clerk has revealed a pattern of institutional misconduct that cannot and will not be ignored. People stopped breathing. This court is now referring all related matters to Federal Civil Rights Review. A formal complaint has been filed with the Department of Justice. A request has been submitted to the Office of the Inspector General and effective immediately. She turned her gaze toward the gallery, where 3 officers sat in the back row like ghosts waiting for someone to name them. The officers involved in the arrest of Mr. Caleb Morgan are to be suspended pending investigation. Gasps, real ones. And then the final blow. I'm also requesting that the arresting department, the entire district's operations, be placed under federal review for civil rights compliance and procedural oversight. That courtroom didn't just buzz, it ignited. But Eliza? She didn't flinch. She just folded the paper and set it down like it was a declaration, not a document. She finally sat. That's when Caleb stood, slow, careful, the way someone moves when history is watching. He didn't say much, just stepped forward and spoke quietly, voice steady. "Thank you, Your Honor." But Eliza's reply, that was the part that stuck. "Don't thank me," she said, voice softer now but no less sharp. "Help me keep this from happening again." The weight of that hit harder than any ruling, because this wasn't just her fight anymore, it was ours. Outside the courthouse, the world had already started shifting. New stickers lit up like slot machines. Social feeds exploded. Tra-echoes in the chamber started trending before court even recessed at it. The phrase caught fire, not because of what she'd ruled, but because of how she ruled. Not from fear, not from politics, from a place deeper than law books. From something more dangerous than dissent. Conviction. By sundown, the DOJ had confirmed receipt of her complaint. The arresting officers' badges were logged into evidence, and the department that once laughed off body cams as optional, they were under full federal audit before the clock struck midnight. And Eliza? She didn't go home. She stayed in chambers, alone, writing, calling, planning. Because if justice had finally decided to echo in her chamber, she'd make sure it never went quiet again.